There are seasons in sports that you describe with numbers. Stats that tell the story well enough that you don't need much context. EJ Tackett's 2023 is not one of those seasons. In an insane comeback season after one of the greatest seasons ever by his rival, EJ came back with a passion, and what he did joined the ranks as one of the greatest modern seasons in PBA history. To understand why his 2023 was so great, you have to go back a calendar year, because the season that set it up belonged to the man he had been chasing his whole career. In 2022, Jason Belmonte won his 14th major championship. He claimed his 7th Player of the Year award, and he had 5 titles in a season that reminded everyone that he was still the best bowler on the planet, and it wasn't even close. He had been sitting in that position for a better part of a decade, and nothing about that 2022 season suggested he was going anywhere anytime soon. But behind the scenes, things were starting to change. EJ led the tour in average, and he finished 3rd in points. By the numbers, 2022 should have been the year of Tackett. It was not. Belmonte took it yet again, same as he had done many other times before. Then came the US Open. Tackett led qualifying by over 500 pins. He was the event leader all week. He was just 90 minutes from home, and the Triple Crown was just 1 win away. Then the title match started, and it all fell apart. He found himself in a disaster from the opening shot. With some open frames on the left lane and nothing going right, Simonson cruised to a 232 to 165 victory. With the loss, Tackett joined a very short list of US Open runner-ups who had led qualifying by over 500 pins and still managed to lose when it mattered most. Bowling as the 1 seed in his home state for the title that was eluding him for so long had been a fairy tale gone wrong. The memory of the loss sat with him throughout the entire offseason. When he came back in 2023, the score he had to settle was bigger than Player of the Year. He had something to prove to himself and the league as a whole. The 2023 season opened with the same tournament that had broken him the year before, the US Open. Royal Pin Woodland in Indianapolis, Indiana. The same building, the same field, and the same achievement sitting 1 match away. Tackett was the number 1 seed, and he described the anxiety building as showtime approached. With the weight of Indiana behind him and dozens of family in the building, Kyle Troup climbed the entire stepladder to reach him in the championship match. It was clear that this title match was going to be no easy feat. However, things shifted in the 10th frame when Kyle Troup went through the nose to leave the Big Four and was unable to convert, meaning this match was EJ's to lose. Just a strike and 8 pins away was the Triple Crown, the 3 original majors, a club that only 8 others were a part of. Tackett stepped up for the 10th frame and threw the best shots of the week. He struck on the first ball, almost leaving a 10 pin, but it fell dramatically late. He needed just 8 on the final shot to win, and he got it. Before the ball even reached the pins, he knew the result and had already celebrated. With a 221 to 208 victory, he had done it at last. With some fist pumps as he ran to the stands where his family was waiting, he reached his father and gave him a hug. They didn't need words to describe this insane achievement. They both knew the impact of that US Open title. He was just the 9th Triple Crown winner in PBA history, and he had done it all 90 minutes from home. Now he had finally responded to that situation last year, on the same pair, the same stage, in the same state. The Triple Crown was his, but it was only the first event of the season. 2 weeks later, he found himself back on TV. Tackett qualified as the number 1 seed, leading the field by an insane 545 pins. A statement performance, to say the very least. The championship match was EJ Tackett against Dom Barrett, a fellow Triple Crown winner, and a veteran player from England who had been competing at the professional level for over a decade. Barrett was pushing back, making his spares, and had EJ Tackett in a fight for the title. Tackett threw 2 bad shots in the middle of the game, but still managed to pull away 231 to 226, his 18th career tour title and his 2nd of the season. Motive ball rep and good friend of Tackett, Brett Spangler, watched the entire thing and said what he saw in 2023 from Tackett was not the same version he had coached before. He was more creative, using the tools that had always existed in his game, but that were not developed enough to fully dominate. He said this version of Tackett was the most skilled version he had ever seen. 2 titles in 3 events, and the US Open on his resume, he was on pace for a historic season. The Jackson Classic was the first real head-to-head moment between EJ Tackett and Anthony Simonson. Both had battled all week on the dual patterns at Jack 60. Both made the show. Simonson earned the number 1 seed, barely edging out Tackett in the final games of qualifying. He claimed victory in his semifinal match and advanced the title match for the chance to take revenge. As Brett Spangler said, this was the best version of Tackett I think we've ever seen, winning in a 277 to 199 match. Tackett was locked in from the opening shot to the very end of the game. He was throwing exactly the kind of shots you need when you're under the bright lights of a PBA telecast. He said afterwards that he had expected Simo to bowl well every single time he touched the lanes that year. There were players you might have assumed might have an off night here and there, and then there was Simo. He was a threat, and you had to assume he was going to be good regardless. But with 19 career tour titles, 3 wins in 5 events, the tour was now eyeing EJ very, very closely. Now we head to the Tournament of Champions in historic Riviera Lanes in Fair Lawn, Ohio. The Tournament of Champions is the most exclusive major in professional bowling. To even make the field, you have to have won a PBA National Tour title or a regional title, but make it up through the PTQ. The fields here are historic, and you either belong or you don't. Tackett led qualifying from the very start to the very end, averaging over 225 across 48 games on the 40-foot Don Johnson pattern. EJ earned the number 1 seed for the second time this season at a major championship. He had been on TV 4 times in the same year and won 3 of them. He was sitting undefeated in title matches, 3 for 3 on titles, and he had all the momentum to take the title and continue the streak. He lost. Jason Belmonte had sat in 58th place after the first round of qualifying, an insane 154 pins outside of the cut. Then, he fired a crazy 1446 series, snuck into the field in match play, and climbed the entire stepladder on TV from outside the top 50 to the title match. And the cherry on top, he beat his biggest rival, EJ Tackett. With that win over EJ, Belmo is now 3-0 in major championships against Tackett, and 6-2 overall. He had spent most of that week with no path to victory and had found one anyway. Belmo was still here to prove that he belonged. This only served as a reminder to Tackett that his biggest rival wasn't going anywhere. The Kokomo Classic at Heritage Lanes came next. Tackett did not win this event, but he didn't need to. 3 titles, first seed at 2 majors, leading the tour in every category. The season was not in any danger of going downhill. This was the middle of the professional season. Once again, the tour slowed down and took a breath before the biggest 2 weeks of the year. This was the regular season, and no one can win every event. And while these events matter for titles and stats, the WSOB was the real thing on everyone's mind. The World Series of Bowling is the most elite part of the PBA schedule in any given year. Multiple events on multiple patterns, and the World Championship to boot. What more could you ask for as a PBA fan? In 2023, it was held at Bolero Wauwatosa in Wisconsin, and what happened across those 10 days became the defining stretch of the season. But to make it to the World Championship, they had to make it through the 4 animal patterns first. So first up, the Cheetah Championship. The Cheetah is the shortest of the animal patterns. Tackett qualified second, right behind BJ Moore. He beats Joseph Grandin in the semifinal, and beats BJ in the championship match in a 259 to 178 beatdown. Title number 4 of the season, he was now the 17th player in PBA history to win at least 20 career tour titles. He's the second youngest to reach that milestone, missing Pete Weber's record by a mere 14 days. The next night, the Scorpion Championship. Tackett qualifies second once again, beats Jesper Svensson in the semifinal, and now finds himself in the 6th title match appearance of the season against Jacob Buttriff. But something was different tonight. He was unable to close it out when it mattered most. He had made it to the title match for the 6th time that season. Once again, he was proving that this is the best version of Tackett we've ever seen. And even though he lost, he had reached 20 titles just a night earlier, and the World Championship was still looming in the distance. In the end, the stepladder came down to Tackett as the 1 seed against Belmonte, who had climbed the stepladder from the very bottom in one of the greatest performances in a stepladder final. He had beaten Santtu Tohavanainen, then Jacob Buttriff, then Anthony Simonson on the way up. This was the very same Belmonte that had beat him a month earlier, and the same Belmonte that was 3-0 against him in major title matches. Like before, Tackett told his ball rep that he was probably going to face Belmonte that day. He had already began mentally preparing for it differently than he would for anyone else. Turns out, he was right. Belmo climbed to the title match, exactly as Tackett had predicted. The match was an absolute battle from the opening frames. Heading into the 10th frame for Tackett, he needed a double to close it out. With all of it on the line, that memory of throwing the double back in Indianapolis for the US Open came back to him. It was the reference point he needed most, and he drew on it in that moment. He knew he had done it before, and he could do it again. In that moment, it all clicked, and his fate was sealed. With the major on the line, he doubled, beat his biggest rival 254 to 247 in an absolute cinematic masterpiece of a title match. He had finally gotten over 3 years of losing majors to the same guy. 3-0 had become 3-1. Title number 5 on the season, his 2nd major of the year, and he became the youngest player in PBA history to reach 21 career tour titles. Now it's the 5th and final major of the year, the Players' Championship. Tackett earned the number 1 qualifying seed, making him the only player in PBA history to be the top seeded player at 4 major championships in the single season. Unfortunately, he was upset in the quarterfinals section of the bracket by Kevin McCune, who went on to win the title and make the McCune family the first 3-generation family of PBA Tour title holders. The loss stung EJ. When you're the best player on the tour and everybody knows it, losing the chance to tie your rival's record is painful. In the perspective of an all-time great season, losing in a bracket format as the number 1 seed doesn't seem so bad. And although it wasn't the finish to the tour he wanted, he still had that record to his name. After the Players' Championship came the PBA Super Slam Cup in late May. It brought together the best players from the majors: Tackett, Simo, Belmo, Buttriff, and McCune. It was a non-title event, nothing to lose, but everything to gain. Once again, Tackett reached the final. Belmo beat him. That part was familiar. However, that's not what I want to focus on here, because the semifinal match was honestly more interesting than the title match. Tackett rolled a perfect game on national television. It was against the very same person who had beaten him a week earlier. The crowd erupted, and $10,000 was added to EJ's pocket. The PBA unfortunately doesn't recognize it as an official televised perfect game due to it being a non-title event. However, that game only added to his list of achievements. Had that 300 game happened in the title match or in one of the other events, it would have only added to the legacy of Tackett. By the end of the season, he had 5 titles, 2 majors, and led the tour in average with 227.18. He led the tour in earnings with $458,450. He was number 1 at 4 out of 5 majors, a PBA record. He also had one of the greatest Player of the Year campaigns, winning 82.5% of the vote. The second place, Anthony Simonson, finished at just 6.8%. Tackett later said that Simo had something to do with it. Knowing that Simo was going to be there week after week drove him higher than he could have gone alone. it remains one of the most dominant individual seasons the PBA Tour has ever seen. Historic from the very first week to the very last. He had set a record, just like his rival did in 2017. This was the season where Tackett effectively ended the era of Belmonte. After this season, EJ would have an insane 2024, 2025, and is already on pace to be Player of the Year in 2026. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you to my members on screen. Don't forget the OHB Shammies are also on DH Lab. Click the link in the description and use code OneHandedBowling to get 10% off your entire order. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I'll see you guys next time.